You know what I've taken out of this?
Go on.
I really want a Fry's chocolate cream.
And there you go.
I've never wanted something so much in my life as I want this right now.
So we've all learnt something today, haven't we? Hello and welcome all into the MO podcast. As always, you're here with me, Consummatious Ann.
And me, Andrea.
And today we are going to be talking about Christiana Edmunds, who was the chocolate cream killer. If you were knocking about Brighton in the 1870s, death by chocolate wasn't a dessert, it was a promise. And Christiana Edmunds kind of tried to kill as many people as she could with this. Now, just want to say this: I got this, not the information, but I got the inspiration from Dark Histories, which is a really great podcast, and it's got loads of random stuff on there. So, if you want to hear a better version of this, go over there to Dark Histories and join them.
That's not Bailey Sarian's podcast, is it?
No, it's not.
It's not her Dark Histories.
No, okay. It's a lad called Ben. I think he may have been doing it longer than she's been doing it, but
okay.
I honestly don't know. But he's an English guy, and he does the most random stuff. I've never heard anything he's done on any other stuff apart from this, because I steal all his ideas. But hopefully he's a forgiving person. But just before we get into all that, like and subscribe and come and join us if you like this kind of stuff. We don't take ourselves seriously, obviously, so if you're looking for serious content, then click off now. But we do have a website where we do blogs. We've got all the podcasts that are embedded over there. We write about stuff that takes our fancy, and we post
or stuff we see
there.
In the news.
Yes, indeed. Anything that pops up that's kind of crazy and has a tedious link to anything we're interested in, then we post it over there. But now that's out of the way, we'll crack on. So, Christiana Edmunds was born into a privileged family in 1828. Her father, William, was an architect who pretty much built Margate's top-tier attractions, if they have any.
I was going to say, I didn't know they had any, so...
The only thing I know about Margate is from Only Fools and Horses when they went on the Jolly Boys outing there, so... That's literally...
Fair enough, yeah, okay.
But apparently...
That's that guy's claim to fame, and no one knows.
Yeah.
No one knows what it even is.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. But William Edmunds, apparently he built and designed the lighthouse and the boulevard and most of the houses that are on the front there, and he was compensated accordingly. Now, he was well off, but unfortunately he would go on to die in a mental asylum. Now, the reason that I mention this is because later on this would be brought up in Christiana's trial as a defence that mental illness ran in the family, and obviously because it's that time in the world, Christiana was actually diagnosed with hysteria in her early 20s. Now, obviously, she's probably being emotional, but that's...
Hysteria... So being emotional, you get diagnosed with hysteria. How... What, do you just have to cry a lot? Or what defines... Because if I... hysteria, I saw a video online today where this woman cut in front of a guy in a supermarket, and he was like, I was here first, you've cut in front of me. And she just had a full-on meltdown, screaming and shouting, "Don't touch me, get him out of here, get him out." And she was batshit crazy, for lack of the medical term. That to me is hysterical. If you are shouting and screaming and ranting and raving at somebody in a supermarket, that's hysteria. Like, just kind of going, the stress is getting too small for me. It's not hysteria.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think it's an easy thing, especially at the time, because it's the 1900s. Men still aren't very forthcoming, but like periods and stuff, they didn't deal with any of that. They didn't know anything about that. To be quite frank with you, I'm surprised most women got past puberty, like in this age, that they weren't all locked up. And I think hysteria is kind of an easy way to get rid of someone who's just doing your head in a bit.
Well, so if she had hysteria, then was she not treated with the metal vibrator thing? Wasn't that used to treat hysteria?
Well, yes, it was. So she may have well had that kind of. She may have well had that treatment, and this is what we'll talk about, because she was seen by a doctor, and she did start having feelings for him. So maybe he did have the.
May I'd have faked it every day.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not like they had them at home.
Yeah.
You had to go to the doctor to have an orgasm.
Yeah.
Because I suspect in those days it was pretty frowned upon to have sex for fun.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, depends where you are now, but some people still think that.
Yeah.
So, Brighton in Victoria, England was one of the most popular seaside resorts, with thousands of tourists each year congregating there. Now, rich is probably not the correct word to be using, but Brighton had been kind of exclusive ever since George, Prince of Wales, had set up his base there, and with his marvellous pants. By the 1800s, and after having the monarchy's money invested, the town grew exponentially. In less than 60 years, from 1801 to 1861, the population grew tenfold, from 7,000 to over 70,000. Now, in such a short space of time, obviously, that's going to bring in people who want to live there. And today, I mean, I don't think it's as exclusive as it was, but it's still seen as kind of better than Blackpool, which is not hard. I should have chosen seaside resorts a little better there, but
Blackpool?
Yeah. I mean, as a seaside resort to visit, where would you go? Like, it's the south coast, isn't it? Really, it's not. You won't go.
Well, I mean, like the other side, like Cornwall kind of side, that side of the country.
Yeah,
near maybe it's nearing Wales, but not Wales. That kind of side. You don't want to go that side. I mean, okay, fine. If we want to, let's clutch it. Let's go Bournemouth. Bournemouth's a nice seaside resort town.
Yeah, but I mean, a nice seaside resort town that's still easy to get to. Remember, trains had only just been invented at this point. There wasn't motorways and shit. You were still riding a horse to get anywhere. So.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so for the dense population, for it to grow that quickly in such a short space of time is quite good. But one of the newcomers to this newly burgeoning town was the Edmunds family. Now, this was without William, obviously, because he went a bit off his tits. And this was in late 1860. Now, Christiana was a spinster at this point, having never married, and she lived with her mother on Gloucester Place in Brighton, which was a short walk to the main thoroughfare of the Grand Parade. Now,
how old was she for a spinster?
22? So for a spinster, she
23?
was... No, she was actually hitting her... Well, yeah, I suppose 30s. Yeah, so she was like 32, I think, at this point. So
I guess, to be fair, the probably the lifespan back then was about 39, so...
Exactly. So she's on the edge now. She's not drawing
Yeah.
a pension just yet, but she's getting very close to it. So Gloucester Grand Parade was where Dr. Charles Beard and his family lived. Now, Dr. Beard was the Edmunds physician, and after Christiana had some sessions with him, obviously, she became infatuated with him. Maybe
I mean, yeah, it's to be
newfangled,
expected.
newfangled vibration machines in his office.
He could have, like, blindfolded her or something and just said, like, I do this with my hands, and, like, not told her the truth, you know? So she didn't realise it was a machine. She thought it was this special talent that he had, and he had alone.
I mean, to be honest with you, at this point in time, if you're giving a woman an orgasm, you had a special talent. I don't think...
At any time.
Well, yeah. I was going to say, I don't think during the 1900s, many men looked at the female anatomy and went, ooh, I could do something with that. I just think they kind of went, I'll slap it, and then that'll be it.
Yes.
Roll
True.
over and have a nap. But...
What's changed?
Yeah. History repeats itself. So, the truth of whether they were making the piece with two backs is now lost in time. Beard claims that he never touched her. It was the machine. But as he was clearly the catalyst for some crazy stuff that went on and what he got roped into, some sources think he was having his cake and eating it, with Christina being the cake there.
I mean, what kind of... So, say if, like... So she went to the doctor and he said, you've got... I'm diagnosing you with hysteria. Like, genuinely, what kind of treatment would she have been prescribed? Because if she was prescribed, like... I mean, this was the era of Freud, wasn't it? So she could have been prescribed... He could have said, lie on a couch and talk to me. And I suppose... If that was the kind of treatment that he'd sort of, I mean, not on a Freud level, but on a kind of mini therapy kind of session level, that would have been very important. Like, that would have blown her mind that a man actually is sitting and listening to her, and that's very attractive.
Yeah.
When men sit and listen.
So this is the thing as well, and she's 30 plus. She's not married yet. She may have not had someone spending this much time with her and listening to her, and like. I think it was kind of therapy sessions that they had. I don't think he was like getting the hammer out and hitting her on the knee and going, yeah, that works, whatever that does. But
so then, you build a closeness, don't you?
Exactly. So unfortunately, I think Christiana read too much more into this than was on offer, than the doctor was trying to give, or maybe.
He abused the patient-doctor relationship.
Yeah, and he started using...
Led her on a bit.
Yeah, he didn't use the machine anymore. But by September 1870...
The plan would have been foiled if he'd stopped using the machine, She'd have sacked him off.
Yeah, but like, that weren't the same as last time. And now I've got something sticky on my face. What's going on? So by September 1870, regardless of whether they were doing the piece with two backs, but most probably due to it, Edmunds had made up her mind that Mrs. Emily Beard was becoming a third wheel and she needed to disappear. So her first and only thought about how to attempt to do this was to use poisoned chocolates. One night she visited the Bears' residence when she knew the doctor was out. She did come bearing gifts, but when Emily didn't really fancy having any kind of like sweet treats, Edmunds forcibly shoved a chocolate into her mouth.
How do you...
So...
No, that's impossible.
So
you can't force a chocolate in someone's mouth.
Do you want one? Kind of.
You can't, because you just go like that. You just clench your teeth. It is nothing getting through there.
Maybe she was yawning. at the time, and she saw a window of opportunity. She just launched it at her face and got lucky.
I mean, I'm presuming because love triangles are not a new thing, even back then. So I'm assuming that the wife was like, she kind of knew this woman. Probably, as is quite often the case in many love triangles, the guy was like, oh, this girl, this patient, she just won't leave me alone.
She's so terrible.
She's all over me, honestly. And so presumably his wife will have heard about her. And like, if you answer the door, the last thing I'm going to be doing is having any kind of conversation with her, let alone taking any chocolates off her. I'm just going to shut the door in her face.
So, yeah. So this is the thing. The families knew each other because they were wealthy. Like, Christiana's family were wealthy enough to be able to live there and to be able to get regular sessions. So it wasn't... And they lived 2 streets apart. Do you know what I mean? So they were aware of each other, but what goes on in the doctor's room goes on in the doctor's room, kind of thing. So I agree 100%. He would have been going, oh, this woman, she keeps coming round, and I've had to wind up that machine 3 times this week.
Okay, so say even if he stuck to, say, doctor-patient confidentiality and didn't mention any of the sessions or anything to his wife, is that not weird then that this woman who lives 2 streets across, that we only really know by name, is rocking up at my door offering me chocolates?
Exactly.
People ain't just that kind for the crack.
Exactly. So this is the thing. Now, after Emily got over the fact that she just had a chocolate forcibly put in her mouth, she tasted a bitter and foul taste in her mouth and spat the chocolate out. Now, at this point, Edmunds made her excuses and left. Now, when the good doctor arrived back home, his wife explained what had happened, and he ended the sessions with Edmunds. He said, we can't be doing this anymore, because she knows, basically.
You can't be shoving chocolates down her throat.
Yeah, please don't come round to my house and accost my wife in that way, please. It's
Either way, it was a terrible plan. If the wife knew that they were having these sessions and he'd been like playing it down like, oh, she's all over me like a bad rash, then her showing up at the front door, bad idea, because she's not going to fall for, oh, I just want to be friends.
Yeah.
Right? But also, if she didn't know anything about the sessions and she was just some random stranger just rocking up at her door, offering her chocolate again, bad plan. That whole plan is crap.
It is. So if you think that plan's crap, wait until what Christiana thought would be a better plan. Because she took this cease and desist by the doctor quite badly. Now, the plan, or the scheme that she came up with to get the doctor back in her good graces, was she would prove herself innocent of any wrongdoing. Don't know how she's going to get away with forcibly shoving a chocolate in someone's mouth, because that is quite wrong. But
that's a weird thing to make up as well if it didn't happen.
Exactly. Like, well, what is anyone getting it? What's Emily getting out of this if she's just going, yeah, she came round, shoved chocolate in my mouth? It's just
exactly like he comes home and she's like white and she's shaking and he's like, are you all right? Have we been burgled? And she's like, no, some random woman rocked up and tried to stick her Thorntons down my throat. I gotta get over it. That's a bizarre thing to say.
Exactly. And because the doctor thought, Emily had explained there was a bitter taste in my mouth, it tasted like it was burning, he actually cottoned on pretty quickly that he thought that Christiana was poisoning her, because...
If it was burning, was it bleach? Or like acid or something?
It was...
Poison doesn't burn, does it?
What was it? It was... Strychnine, excuse me.
I didn't realise that strychnine burned.
So...
Screws up my plans.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a very distinctive taste to it. So... The doctor was kind of onto it at this point, and he was like, no, you need to take a step back. So Christiana thought, how is she going to get out of this? And her thought process was, she's going to blame the confectioner. It was nothing to do with her. She just went to the shop, bought a box of chocolates. In all goodness, she went round to give the doctor a gift. The doctor weren't in, so she wanted his wife to taste it, and the confectioner must have done this. Now, yeah, don't know.
Because what
how
a way
she
to
got
put
that.
your entire company out of business.
Yeah, exactly. Like just random lucky dip. There you
Yeah.
go. So she decided that strychnine was her choice of poison. Now this had its drawbacks. It was regulated up to a point, and it had a very distinct, bitter taste.
And
Arsenic,
it's canny obvious when people die.
yeah,
They've been poisoned by that because it pulls their teeth and their gums back and aches and kind of go
yeah, there
very
are.
attractive.
But this was a few years before arsenic hit the mainstream, and it was the distinction is here. Like the Victorian people, even though you're only 100 years from witch burnings, they'd kind of turned all their back on or at least poisoners had turned their back on the good old fashioned witch remedies. Do you know what I mean? There was loads of stuff that you could have utilised that witches apparently utilised, but they've gone for a synthetic kind of thing here. It's like,
Well, I don't know, because witches used a lot of herbs and natural plants and remedies and stuff like that. So if you're in the middle of the city, probably not easy to just take a walk into a nearby forest and collect some poisonous mushrooms.
yeah, again, I'd say that nowadays, but it wasn't as industrialised then as it is now.
I know, but taking a trip out to find some natural remedies in a nice dress, that's sus.
I suppose, yeah, you're gonna get caught straight away. aren't you?
Proper
But-
women didn't do that.
But at least you're not going to get burnt as a witch, I suppose. Swings and roundabouts. So Edmunds had started out by stockpiling this poison, and although it was regulated, it was still Victorian times. And do you know what? If you knew someone and they thought you were in good standing, then you'd be able to get whatever you wanted, really.
So back then, was
basically-
it just used as rat poison then?
Yeah, so literally all you needed to do to buy this poison was have a witness that knew you and knew you were of good standing to countersign the chemist's poison book when you bought it from him. So you went into the shop, you went, "Can I have some poison?" And they'd ask you, what do you want the poison for? And it's like, got some rats in it, need to get rid of them. And the chemist would go, "Well, I don't know you that well. Do you have a witness that can sign my book? Because then once I've written it down in the book, we're both good." Because that's like a
Because
policeman.
two
there.
whacked out people make it okay.
And basically, the first time Christiana went to do this, she went into the chemist, and the chemist went, "Oh, we need someone to countersign. Why don't you try the woman next door?" It's like he offered, he gave her the person to go and see. It's not like, "Do you have anyone?" So, and plus the fact, no one had a passport back then. No one had ID, a driver's license or anything. So
No.
how do you know this person is the person?
And apart from anything, what other reason are you going to give? What do you need the poison for? Rats. There's nothing else. What else are you going to say?
Do you want to know what the reason was?
Go on
So the reason was because, which is it? The first reason is, so the first reason was that she had an old dog, and they were moving to Devon, from Brighton to Devon, and she didn't think the dog would be able to take the journey.
So she was going to poison and kill the dog?
Yep.
But that's a horrible way to go. She
Yeah.
could have just, if she'd have just, beaten it to death or something, that's a bit more merciful than strychnine. Jesus Christ, that's a horrible way to go.
Yep. And then
It's
the
very
chemist just
painful.
went, "Yeah, go next door, get that woman that you don't know, you've never seen before in your life, but get her to come in, because I know her. And if she says you're all right, then you're all right. Just weird. So basically, the woman next door was a milliner, and she sold hats and veils. So Christiana went in, she bought a veil and charmed this woman, and the woman countersigned the chemist's book. Now, Edmunds walked away with a vial of 10 grains of strychnine, which 30 to 60 milligrams can kill a person. So she had quite a decent stash there. Now, over the coming months, other ways were that Edmunds would procure strychnine is to go around to different chemists and claim that they had a rat problem, they had too many stray cats around their building, She would just use poisoning animals, which is, she's up there on the triad, the McDonald's triad, definitely.
She is. Yeah, except she probably didn't kill any animals.
Yeah. And basically, at one point, to try and get the strychnine, she used a young boy to go into the chemist's with a note which claimed that the boy had come from a different chemist's. That chemist had run out of strychnine, and they needed to borrow some until their shipment came in. Now, luckily, this one failed because the chemist was like, I don't believe that in the slightest. The chemist would come to me personally.
I was going to say, it's just as well, really, or that would be chaos.
Exactly. So once Edmunds had the poison, all she needed now was the vehicle to deliver it. Now, not to draw attention to herself, she would pay and send street urchins into the shop where she was going to buy her chocolate creams. Now, this shop was owned by John Maynard, and he'd been in business for a good few years. Now, what she would do is she would buy the chocolate creams, she'd lace them with poison, and then get them returned as she didn't want them. So they go back on the shelves to be sold. Which is weird in itself. Because I get if it was a tin of beans or something, because it's sealed and it's not open, but it's just chocolate.
It's a bit minging.
You can do anything with, really.
Yeah, open the box, sneeze on it, put the lid back on and go, have it back, I don't want it anymore.
Exactly. This is how COVID started. Well, maybe. So, all this boils down to is basically Victorian times were wild and people were far too trusting. Now, what she would also do as well is just leave these bags of chocolate in shops. So she'd go into a shop, put the chocolate down, pretend to shop around, and then discreetly leaving the chocolate there. So if someone was greedy, they'd eat them.
Free chocolate, yes!
Exactly. Now, this was all to lay down that the fact that John Maynard was responsible for trying to poison Dr. Beard's wife, not Christiana. So she's putting a lot of legwork into this.
She is, to be fair. Fair play to her. Yeah. She really is.
Yeah. Now, a few people got ill, but, and this is the real kicker, because they got better after a few days, no one really cared. It wasn't newsworthy, which was what Christiana was trying to get. She was trying to get the name into the papers and to get word of mouth. But because it was like, it's 1870 and I've got the shits, no one cares. Like, we've all got them, mate.
Can you imagine
Come on.
the effort she's gone to? It must have taken her days and days and days. And everyone's just like, oh, a little bit of a tummy bug going round, but passes after 24 hours.
This is it. Everyone's like, oh, that cold's going around again, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, got a bit of Montezuma's revenge. Jesus. So, basically, nothing was noted until June 1871. Now, this was when a 4-year-old Sidney Barker died. Barker and his family was on holiday in Brighton, and as a treat, they purchased some chocolate creams from Maynard's. Some of the ones that Christiana had returned, and they'd gone back on the shelf, because why not? Barker's uncle fell ill and a doctor was called. Now, as he only had the trots and he was a little bit green around the gills, he was told to get some rest and fluids down him. But a little while later, 4-year-old Sydney started vomiting, and before a different doctor could arrive, he was already dead. Now, the doctor spoke to the uncle, and the uncle said, yeah, I've been ill, so it must be that. There must be something going round, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the doctor examined Sydney, and pretty much right away he saw that a coroner was needed for investigate the poisoning because, as you said, strychnine is very, very...
It's kind of obvious.
It leaves a lot of telltale signs.
Did it turn your gums black as well?
Yeah. So
pretty obvious.
It was... basically, it was the rigidity that sets in straight away in the way that you die. You're basically in that pose forever.
Yeah.
And as you say, it pulls back your gums and your muscles, like...
This kid doesn't need a doctor, he needs a body bag. Amazon, £17.9.
Amazon, £17.99, yeah. At the coroner's inquiry, which was held in the Carpenter's Arms pub.
Of course it was.
Love the 80s, love the 1900s. Coroners were just in pubs all the fucking time.
To be fair, it's probably the same up here now. That's probably where they have all
Yeah.
their meetings. In the working men's clubs.
Oh, yeah, probably. Definitely. So, at the coroner's inquiry, the family of Sydney gave evidence as to what type of chocolate, and more importantly for Edmunds, where they were purchased from. The inquiry found that the death of Sydney Barker was accidental, and Maynard, although he was exonerated, he was forced to destroy all his stock, just in case anything slipped through.
Do you think that's when he sacked off chocolate completely and went on to wine gums?
No, unfortunately, right, I genuinely thought it was the same guy, and it's not.
Is it not?
I thought, no, it's not Maynard's.
Oh.
Because I think, where are they from? I think Maynard's, they're from a different place. They didn't originate in Brighton, unfortunately. Because that would have been the story.
I think aren't they Scottish?
Yeah.
Or is that just advertising?
There's juice loose about this
Juice, yeah.
hoop.
Might just be advertising.
Yeah, it could be. But amazingly, at the coroner's inquiry, Edmunds gave evidence. Now, she claimed her and a friend had fallen ill after eating Maynard's chocolate, and she later contacted Dr. Beard to use this as vindication that she was innocent. But Dr. Beard was not that simple, and he still refused to have any contact with Christiana. Now, this only galvanised her to go a little bit fucking Snickers, and, you know, she went proper nutty with it. After the inquiry, she sent several anonymous letters to Sydney's father imploring him to sue Maynard's. Yet, in these letters, she did say that the lady that testified at the inquiry would do so again, meaning that she would be quite happy, even though at the inquiry, these letters are anonymous, but at the inquiry, she gave her name, and she's saying, yeah, if you get another inquiry, I'll speak again, don't worry about it. So, she didn't really, cover her back there. Yeah. So, on the 10th of August, several prominent people in Brighton received gift baskets of chocolates and cakes. These included Dr. Beard's wife, again, the editor of the Brighton Gazette, a local prominent solicitor, and Christiana herself. Now,
Would you though? You'd just be like, bin.
This is the thing. Now, this was supposed to be at the height of the poisoning, poison mania going on in Brighton.
And a rando package shows up.
Anonymously just turned up, rocks up at your door, and you're like, ooh, Maynard's. Oh, they sound good. Basically, so Mrs. Beard fell ill again. Now you have to start thinking it's her fault. Because, do you know what I mean?
She's a bit of an idiot.
She's not learned.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, exact same chocolate. 6 months later, and she's like, "Oh, gorge myself on these."
She's a bit of a moron.
So Dr. Wife's beard fell ill again, and several servants.
Dr. Wife's beard.
Mrs. Beard fell ill again, and several servants of the other people suffered gut rot after eating the gift baskets.
Well, they're stupid as well.
But I think the people that they were addressed to got a little bit clever and went, "Oh, you know what? We'll give
these to the servants.
Presents to the servants. You know, I'm not getting gut rot. I read the paper."
But you
what was the editor of the fucking paper? Do you know what I mean? Like, he's not reading his own paper.
And you would have thought,
what's going on in the news today, love?
You would have thought the servants would be a bit like streetwise, and they would be like, "Oh, well, this is going on. I'm not taking my chances." Like, I know we're pretty hungry, and we could do with some. They look lovely, by the way, but no.
Yeah.
You didn't even need to be able to read back then, because the newsboys would just shout the headlines out. Get big box of chocolates poisoned.
Extra.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't be eating Quality Street at Christmas this year. So now Dr. Beard kind of clocked on a little bit, and he got a bit pissed off. So he went to the police about Edmunds and what she had been up to. Inspector Gibbs was the investigating officer, and he had already noticed some consistency with witness statements, mentioning a woman who had been spotted around Maynard's and where other poisoning victims were. So the inspector went to visit Christiana after she received her package. He took the note from her package, which Edmunds was at pains to let him know that the name and the first line of the address was spelled incorrectly. So she went out of her way to say, "I don't spell my name like that, and that first line of the address
I know how to spell my own address, so it can't be me."
Yeah, exactly. Yet,
was it in her handwriting?
In a Sherlock Holmes-esque twist, the investigator then wrote to Edmunds to ask when and where she had received this package and who she thought it was from. So he went to her house, he interviewed her, and then he went back to the station and went, "Hang on a minute, I'll send her a letter." Do you know what she did? She wrote back in her own fucking handwriting. The same handwriting on the note.
He knew what he was doing. That was brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And
she could have written in caps or something, for God's sake.
This is the thing. And now, this is a little bit of history as well, because Gibbs took her letter to the foremost handwriting expert of the day. Now, this was a guy who was kind of the first professional handwriting expert. There wasn't such a thing before this. And he only did it because his dad was kind of a part-time lexicographer. His dad enjoyed it and passed it on to his son. And he actually worked at I think it was the Met. At this time, he was kind of the first kind of policeman to do this. So he took it to her and went, "Well, you can see it's a fucking same, isn't it? Why'd you need me for this?" Kind of thing. So, because everyone in Brighton knew about the poisonings, the trial was moved to the Old Bailey. Christiana was arrested, she was thrown in jail, but because she wouldn't get a fair trial in Brighton, because everyone knew everyone there, so they moved it to the Old Bailey in London, where she was charged with the attempted murder of Mrs. Emily Baird and the murder of Sidney Barker. Now, during the trial, Edmunds still tried to set herself apart by dressing in black velvet and fur trim. Occasionally she wore a veil, maybe the one she bought from the first witness that signed the poison book, but who knows? And she was always heavily made up. She also claimed that her age was 35, not 40 plus, as it actually was. Although one reporter from the Daily News did write that her lower jaw was massive and animal in its development. So, yeah.
Wow. Was that reporter part of The Sun? Because I feel like they still write like that.
Exactly. I think this was the first tabloid kind of exposure that started to happen.
But like, what was her thinking? Like, what was her logic here? Like, okay, so I want an affair trial. So what I'm going to do is dress really rich and extravagant so everybody hates me instantly. I'm going to dress like a murderess.
This is it, and this is kind of how her head was working or wasn't working. She was kind of the centre of attention, so she wanted everyone to look on her as the centre of attention. But if you're
they're going to anyway.
Yeah, if you're a murder suspect, surely you want to play it down a little bit, like be a little bit discreet and go, "Wait, I'm right now."
Do the old Amber Heard, like, good girl makeup, bit ruffled hair, like dark circles under your eyes, like you've never slept because you can't bear the thought of what you've been through or what you've done, what you've been accused of, and keep
just
crying.
Have half an onion in your pocket every now and then when you got to blow your nose, wipe it in your eyes, see crying.
Yes. I'll stand there they can't prove it was my handwriting. Lots of people write like me. That's how they teach you how to write in school. What proof have you got? To be fair, they said that, like, a distinctive woman was spotted around all these places. Like, something about her must have made her stand out. Like, did she have, like, a neon green dress on, or... I don't know.
Well, apparently she had a massive jaw that was animal in its development, so...
Fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
Fuck me, look at Bigfoot over there. What's happening over there?
Oh my god, do you remember that video that came out of the Charlie Chaplin time traveller? And it was that woman that clearly was a man with, like, size 13 feet. Maybe that was her. Maybe it was a woman. Because that person stood out like a sore thumb. I would remember that person if they were in a sweet shop next to me.
Yeah. So, I think everywhere she went, she kind of made her presence felt, even though should have been a bit low key. She was still.
I think she walked into all the chocolate shop
fucking jaw,
and going into all the sweet shops and going, "Are there any poisoned chocolates in here?" No.
Yes.
Dropping that bag down there. No. Good. I shall move on.
Yeah. In fairness, I mean, she did try and force someone to eat a chocolate.
Yeah, that's...
when they weren't hungry. So, I mean, this is kind of all...
You don't have to be hungry to eat chocolate, Aunt. I do it all the time.
Well, yeah, I mean...
But, like, you've really, like, you can't... She would have ended up with it up her nose and all sorts. You can't. Even if you went... Eat the chocolate. Eat the chocolate. Eat it now. You can't. It's just... It's not possible to shove a chocolate down someone's throat unless she kind of went, "No, I don't want any." Okay.
Just a little.
I'm watching my waist. It's not possible. It's impossible.
I'm not allowed to eat it. But if it was to fall in my mouth, who am I to say no? Gotta watch the Weight Watchers.
Then Christiana's like, she ran into my chocolate.
All the evidence that... Yeah, I was just holding it up and she just ran past.
She ran into my chocolate 10 times. Sorry, continue.
So, after all the evidence, the jury found her guilty and sentenced her to death. Now, upon hearing this verdict, Edmunds approached the judge and claimed she was pregnant.
That old... one-trick horse.
Yeah. She'd been a spinster for 20 years, but now at this point in time, she gets pregnant. Now, this was to give her a stay of execution, because obviously they can't hang a pregnant woman. But they did it differently back then. The judge immediately asked for 12 women of a certain age to step forward and perform an examination.
Right. This is what intrigues me, okay? So, like, in the... Well, I don't know how many historical novels you read, but I used to read an awful lot of historical novels about, like, the Tudors and the Egyptians and things like that. And whenever a woman said, "I'm a virgin," or "I'm not pregnant," and they would send a priest in to examine her, just by opening someone's legs, pulling their labia apart and going, How can you tell if someone is pregnant? Without the, I mean, obviously nowadays, yes, you send them for a scan. But how back in those days, even in the Victorian age, is it possible to see if a woman is pregnant just by looking up her?
I couldn't even guess.
And like, I'm a woman, and I wouldn't be able to look to part a woman's labia and look up her vagina and go, yep, I see a little eye looking at me there. That looks like a baby.
Yeah. I genuinely don't know how and why, but they were of a certain age. That was in the research, so it must have meant something. But less than an hour later, all the women had said, no, she's not pregnant.
Maybe.
So all 12 of them had a go and had a look up there.
Maybe she kind of, if you kind of go and you gulp loads and loads of air and then it makes you go bloated. Maybe she did that and she was like, see, I'm pregnant because I have a belly. And then as soon as they lay her on her back and parted her legs, she let out this god almighty fart and her stomach went down and the women didn't need to look up anywhere. They were like, yep, that's one mystery down.
Solved it. Jesus. My eyes. Someone open that window.
Ammonia.
Yeah. Now, while awaiting execution, Dr. William Orange examined her mental faculties, and he came to the conclusion that Edmunds was a little bit Toblerone. She was nutty with crazy edges, and she must have her death sentence commuted and be held indefinitely at Broadmoor because she was insane.
Don't know what's worse.
And she did. Yeah, Broadmoor had just started out by this point as well, so they, like, at least it weren't Bedlam.
It probably
That's
wasn't
about
far off.
The best thing you can say about it, yeah. It was new. It was purpose-built, so...
I bet they still handcuffed people to their beds and left them without food and water and sitting in their own piss and shit and stuff.
Yeah. But it was clean. Because it was new. That's about the only thing you can say about it, to be
Everything
quite
can
frank.
get dirty in a week if you let people sit in their own piss and shit.
Certainly can. Now, Edmunds stayed at Broadmoor till her death in 1907. She was aged 78. But she didn't just spend her time quietly in there. She always wore makeup and went so far as to have hair smuggled in so she could make wigs and not be affected by her age. She also tried it on with the male doctors and orderlies.
Of course she did.
Frequently. In fact, 9 months before she died, Edmunds was in hospital and she was heard to say about the up-and-coming Christmas dance, "I shall astonish them all. I shall get up and dance. Venus again." So,
with the animal thing chin.
Yeah. So she was kind of going down fighting there, really. But still, I don't think she learned any lessons from this, which...
You know what I've taken out of this?
Go on.
I really want a Fry's chocolate cream.
And there you go.
I've never wanted something so much in my life as I want this right now.
So we've all learnt something today, haven't we? On that bombshell, this has been the MO podcast with me, Contumacious Anne.
And me, Atreya.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and we shall see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
The MO podcast. The MO podcast. The MO podcast. The MO podcast.